and at local and society level. Women are critical frontline responders when crises hit and crucial voices in decision-making processes, if given the space to be heard. The participation of civil society groups, including women's organizations, makes a peace agreement 64% less likely to fail. And we know the benefit of reducing conflict in other countries is felt in many other countries of the world. And I have seen this particularly in my experience in South Sudan, where women's groups have played a critical role, not only in negotiating the peace agreement, but then trying to hold a recalcitrant group of men accountable for the agreement that they signed. The UK has a strong global reputation in standing up for the rights of women and girls around the world. We strive to transform lives and help to build longer-term prosperity, stability, and a fairer and freer world that will benefit all. But COVID-19 has led to the reversal of a hard-fought progress. Women have been hardest hit economically. We are witnessing a global surge in gender-based violence. Women and girls are also disproportionately impacted by climate change, natural disasters, and conflict because they exacerbate existing inequality and barriers in accessing services and support. That's why the British government is boosting its efforts to support women and girls around the world. Both diplomatic and development efforts will focus on the 3 E's: educating girls, empowering women, and ending violence. On education, the UK has pledged to stand up for the right of every girl to 12 years of quality education, leading the charge to accelerate the pace of global education recovery. Alongside that, we work to ensure education and skills for girls are more relevant to future labour markets. Empowerment, we will protect women and girls' rights in the context of a global rollback. Empowering women includes promoting women's leadership and agency to ensure their voices are heard at all levels, from the community level to women in politics, and ensuring women can participate fully and fairly in the economy. As a leading global voice on women, peace and security, the UK continues to push for the full, equal and meaningful participation of women in all peace efforts. We will drive forward progress, address the woeful lack of women mediators and negotiators, as well as the concerning increase in global reprisals against women peace builders. And I was particularly struck by a photo that was put on the internet a few days ago of a Russian and Ukrainian delegation meeting on the border of Belarus to talk about peace. There wasn't a single woman in that photograph. In 2022, the UK will play a leading role in building a new international consensus to end violence against women and girls, including generating momentum towards a new global agreement and international conference to condemn the use of rape and sexual violence in conflict as a red line. I look forward to listening today to today's contributions from our distinguished panel. I'm particularly grateful to Tatiana, President of Caritas Ukraine, for being with us today, despite the incredibly difficult circumstances. Caritas Internationalis and the wider Catholic networks are doing extraordinary work to assist vulnerable people in Ukraine. Over the last week, the British government has committed around £400 million total offer of support to the current Ukraine crisis. The UK is now the largest bilateral humanitarian donor to Ukraine and its people, many of them women and children who have been forced to flee their homes because of the invasion. Caritas Internationalis and its confederations worldwide are already making the difference on the ground. I hope that today's discussion will lead to greater dialogue on the importance of women's participation in dialogue, peace building, and decision making. It is indeed essential that women have a leading role in the church and in society in the face of the many global challenges that we face. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your remarks, which we know are backed not only by your government, but most importantly, by your experience. For those of you who are joining us late, allow me to introduce you or to welcome you to Church and Society, Women as Builders of Dialogue, an event organized by Caritas Internationalis and the British Embassy to the Holy See. For those who would like to join the conversation online, allow me to let you know that the hashtag we're using on Twitter is Women in Dialogue, and we obviously would like to hear from you. Now, also to my right, we have Mr. Aloysius John, who happens to be the Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis. Mr. John hails from India and began his career in Caritas in 1983. I'm going to make a joke that everyone hates me for, but he started working at Caritas before my parents met. He was elected as Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis in 2019. And since joining the Confederation, he has served with Diocesan Caritas in India and France. He has served as program management for Asia and Oceania, and as the department head of Caritas, both in Asia and Oceania, and the Middle East and North Africa. In 2004, he coordinated tsunami efforts in Sri Lanka, India, and Indonesia, and in 2012, he was decorated with the French National Order of Merit. Allow me again to introduce you to Mr. John, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis.
Thank you, Inés, for this long presentation. Your Excellencies, dear ambassadors, dear bishops, archbishops, Reverend Fathers and Reverend Sisters, dear colleagues of Caritas, ladies and gentlemen. On this important day of remembering, in a special way, the place and role of women in our societies, women as builders of dialogue is quite an opportune topic, especially at a moment when our globalized world is in disarray and want of harmony and dialogue. I would like to place a special thought for the hundreds of thousands of women who are torn apart from their husbands and loved ones and are in exile with their children in Ukraine, to save and protect their children, to give them dignity, and at the same time contributing to protect their motherland. This is important. They are serving their motherland. I want to let them know that Caritas is with them in solidarity at this moment. I'm just back from a visit to the Rohingya camps in Bangladesh 10 days back, and I was in close encounter with the whole community there, where Caritas is working. And I want to start my subject by wanting to witness the important role the women in these camps are playing to be constructors of dialogue and harmony. One woman I met, let me call her Yasmina, she said, "Today I'm a person, because through the empowerment project of Caritas, I'm leading the groups and helping them live in dignity, in solidarity, and in hope." My biggest question at that time was, what does hope means for this woman, where there is no tomorrow? And here is a woman saying, I'm living in hope because I'm leading the community. I found something. This touched me enormously because this woman is displaced in a camp where the present is the future and the present is also the past. Nothing changes. Every day it's the same. They want to go back to their motherland, which is a mirage. It is just an illusion. She said, "My tomorrow is uncertain, but the fact that I know I can give dignity and hope to my community is itself a project for the future. I can lead my community and they have trust in me." This I found was wonderful. Caritas' encounter with women is a moment of empowerment in dialogue, wherein women are made aware that they are equal contributors to project in the society and they have a role to play. For Caritas, equality between men and women is not a question of equality in number, but a liberating process wherein women can be enabled to take up their roles seriously and contribute to building a society of justice, equality, and sharing. Our modern societies constantly think in terms of dichotomy, division, or difference. When we believe that God has created men and women equal, it is our duty and role to look for complementarity, reciprocity, and oneness in our difference. Caritas, in all its projects, in its governance, and in its organization, is constantly taking care to apply these basic principles of living together. Today, Caritas is committed to enhance the women's leadership within the organization, in the communities, and also in the governance. This means Caritas programs, reflections, policies, and ethos give priority to the role of women, their leadership role, which entails building their capacity, offering opportunities, and accompanying them to assume responsibilities. In the projects, Caritas members have mainstreamed women's empowerment as one of the key objectives. For example, in South India, where I come from, there are hundreds of women's groups, and they have leaders who are also playing a political leadership role today. And a few days back, I heard the mayor of Tamil Nadu, Chennai, is a woman. There are women's groups in Latin America, where women play an important role in the development of their communities, and in Africa, women play a capital role in microfinance. Promoting women's leadership role is no more a question of à la mode, but something co-natural to human existence, which has not been given the due attention. Today, through a process of empowerment, that is through awareness building, strengthening capacities, and also opening opportunities, the Confederation is creating a conducive environment for women to play a crucial and determinant role in the society. At a time when the Universal Church is in the synodal process to reflect on how we want to be church in the decades to come, women play an important role in the reflections to voice out their aspirations, to be part of the church that is in dialogue, open to bring all of us to the table to share our experience of faith lived on a day-to-day basis as men and women in order to witness the values of the gospel. Encounter as men and women working together is important to maintain social harmony and peace, and all of us have a role to play. Women play an important role both in society and within the family. On a personal note, I still remember coming from a family of 12, the force and character of my mother, who had to maintain the family unity and growth, as well as the financial management. And I witnessed, and I still remember, how my father lost arguments when it came to internal management and wisdom of family maintenance. I'm sure that the seminar today and the series of seminars to come will certainly give more reflections and thoughts for all of us to continue to live and work in our societies as equals, brothers and sisters in a spirit of complementarity, reciprocity, and co-responsibility based on mutual respect for our uniqueness. Once again, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. John. And allow me to say, as someone who, as a journalist for cruxnow.com, has gone to the Roman offices of Caritas many times, I can attest to the fact that when you talk about women as pillars of dialogue, you don't do it because it's a la moda, but well, because you're forced to, because those offices are filled with women who are thankfully trying to change the world. Now we're going to go to our first speaker who joins us from a distance, Mrs. Maria Immonen, who is the female director. She's the first female director of the World Service, a job she got in 2015. The World Service is the humanitarian and development arm of the Lutheran World Federation. Thank you, Mrs. Immonen, for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings from the LWF, the Lutheran World Federation, a communion of churches, whose relationships with the Catholic family and with Caritas Internationalis particularly are deep and strong. I'm delighted and honored to be invited to this meeting and share with you a few thoughts and reflections on women in church and society, and a few reflections on my own background and growth into a leadership position in the Lutheran World Federation as the director for the humanitarian and development arm of LWF, which is called World Service. The mere fact that I've been invited to this event is in fact the result of decades of intentional dialogue between the Catholic Church and the Lutheran World Federation. An important milestone in that process was reached in 2016 on the occasion of the joint commemoration of 500 years since the Reformation, during which our respective organizations formally signed a letter of intent with the view to increasing and deepening our collaboration significantly. This happens on a continuous basis. My colleagues and I are in touch with Caritas colleagues almost on a weekly basis at different levels. Tomorrow, we have a meeting scheduled to discuss how we can collaborate in the response to the Ukraine crisis. This collaboration is natural and it's increasing. Dialogue itself becomes possible when parties agree to come together, to meet with open minds and listen to each other with the aim to understand. Spending time to discuss similarities, but also not steering away from differences, has helped us to learn more about each other, get to know each other as friends, colleagues and leaders in our organizations, and to identify areas where collaboration is easy and straightforward, but also to work on others where there are more challenges. This is the heart of dialogue, active listening, learning together, not changing who we are or what we are, but recognizing each other as companions in our efforts to work for life in dignity for all, and ultimately finding areas for joint collaboration. This afternoon, I'd like to share a few thoughts about how the LWF has approached the topic of working together for equality, encounter, and renewal, and also how myself as a female leader have grown in this role. The Lutheran World Federation has a long-standing commitment to gender justice and women's empowerment, with a global quota system introduced already in 1984. This ensures that all meetings, study processes, ecumenical gatherings, governance structures always contain a minimum of 40% of men or women. It has guaranteed that all important policy issues are discussed together, and both men and women are equally represented as decision makers throughout church structures. The Lutheran World Federation adopted a gender justice policy in 2013, which is widely used in all of our 148 member churches globally. Gender justice for the LWF implies the protection and promotion of the dignity of both men and women. Most Lutheran churches in the Lutheran World Federation also ordain women into the ministry, and we have dozens of female bishops in many countries. Our 2017 General Assembly adopted resolutions on gender justice with a specific focus on combating sexual and gender-based violence. And the first version of Churches Say No to Violence Against Women was published in 2002. So I think I can say with confidence that the Lutheran World Federation and its members, in dialogue with each other, sorry for that, in dialogue with each other, are including both men and women in that dialogue, and have taken significant strides in working towards women's active engagement and participation in the church over the past decades. I personally come from Finland, a country which most view as fairly progressive and advanced as far as equal rights for men and women are concerned. My grandmother was born in the year where women were given the right to vote in 1906. She brought up her children and grandchildren by example, a politically active women's rights advocate who never ever accepted that there were areas in human life that should not be accessed by women, or career choices unallowed for girls. My mother studied theology in Finland when the ministry was open to both sexes in my church. She became an ordained minister. So from a family and societal background, I would describe I was privileged to grow up in an enabling and egalitarian background. When I was a young professional and my career path took me along routes leading to ecumenical, humanitarian and development engagement, as well as participating in ecumenical events representing my church, my experiences and discussions about dialogue and how to engage in it became more nuanced. I became more aware about how I was treated as a young woman in my own church and by leaders from other churches, which conversations I was included in and which ones I was not, how young females continue to face challenges when applying for positions held by men until now. Through dialogue, I learned more about the realities facing many women in other contexts, both in society at large, but also in the church in particular. How violence against women, even within the church, remains a challenge for Lutherans all over the world. In my own career as a humanitarian and development professional, as a layperson choosing to work within church structures, I have been fortunate to always have been supported by both women and men in pursuing positions of increasing responsibility. I've been spurred on by colleagues and mentors who have had faith in me to be able to take on leadership roles. Bishops and pastors, both male and female, have told me I have to accept responsibility and spoken publicly in support of me and encouraged me when my own faith in my capacities has floundered. The role of encouragers and advocates in the life of female leaders who are stepping into positions not held by women before cannot be understated. But first and foremost, the commitment of the organizations and leadership in those organizations not to waver, but to uphold commitments and remind and call out those who would prefer to ignore them is absolutely crucial. It is not always easy, and some of us, and all of us, are sometimes delusioned, tired, and feel inadequate. But a joint vision of men and women both helps us all to persevere. Dialogue requires that both men and women bring each other into dialogue and accept each other as equals in those dialogues. In structures where power has traditionally been held mostly by men, the responsibility to strictly ensure that women are included still rests heavily with the men. As we have heard from disability advocates, nothing about us without us. When we speak of women as partners in dialogue, we may have to begin by ensuring that they have access to the tables where discussions are had and decisions made. This remains an area where all of us need to remain alert and active. It leads to better understanding and joint ownership of our work, its joys and challenges. It leads to a deep recognition of men and women created by God and equal in his eyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Immonen, for that presentation. Now, we're moving on to what we're calling the panel of this presentation. Allow me to first say or point out that Caritas Internationalis is a confederation of over 160 members that work at the grassroots levels in almost every country in the world. This means that when a crisis hits, Caritas is literally already on the ground. For this reason, it is my honor to introduce to you Tatiana Stanwinski, who joined us from Caritas Ukraine. She's the president of Caritas Ukraine, and hopefully will forgive me for the way I mistreated her name. But Tatiana, I'm going to go with that, was appointed as president of Caritas Ukraine in 2021. Previously, she worked with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, where she worked as the director of collection to aid the church in Central and Eastern Europe. Before then, she served as the director of development of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. Tatiana, I believe you're online. Thank you very much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, distinguished guests, for having this opportunity to address you today. I don't have a prepared presentation for you. I will be speaking from my heart. These days have been very full for us in Ukraine, as you can imagine. So as I was thinking about the topic of the role of women in the church and society and in builders of dialogue, and in these days, somehow it was hard for me to think separately between men and women, because what we see now in Ukraine is a huge movement of solidarity and support for people who are fleeing. And it involves both men and women. And it's really, for me, it's been inspiring to be with our entire Caritas network as we work together to answer the needs of the crisis at hand. I do want to mention that when we were, before it started, we did have a time of contingency planning. And again, that process involved both men and women, although it was initiated by women, this idea of trying to plan and to be ready ahead of time. And what that allowed us to do was the moment when the attacks began, we had a plan in place and we immediately began to serve. There was no pause in our work. And again, it was, for me, an inspiring moment to see how our local directors and how the local staff threw themselves into the work of serving others. When we talk about dialogue and restoring dialogue, we've mentioned also the question of human dignity, and that restoration of human dignity happens through the work of Caritas. It happens through this understanding of seeing the other, of seeing the value in the other in whatever situation they might find themselves in. And it's a restorative process. It restores the person who receives, and it restores the person who gives. Certainly, I can say that women have certainly been equally on the front line in resolving, trying to respond to the crisis at hand. I was thinking about who I wanted to lift up to share with you. And I had a moment when I was contemplating about the question of peace building, and I remembered one of my favorite programs when I first arrived in Ukraine, run by my colleague Hanna, who led a whole team of peace builders that were working throughout the network and working on building dialogue. They were creating space for people to exchange. They were able to create the preconditions for people to be able to come out of themselves and to be themselves and to express their opinions and to find that interaction with others. And today, Hanna is continuing to work in this field. She's working on putting together teams to be going to the places where the displaced persons are lodged, and to begin working on these questions of helping people to process what's happening, helping to start dialogue, and helping to resolve any conflicts as they might begin to occur. I also wanted to lift up my colleague, Ksenia. Again, a very, I would say, a strong woman who led a large project in the past. And these days, she is very humbly serving us, doing simple things, everything, just doing, seeing what needs to be done and then answering those needs. And in some ways, I think that that's the genius often that we find in women, yeah, who are able to see needs and then out of their heart, they answer them, yeah, in the best way that they can. And you see that in the women who have gone to the train stations just to see what they can do to help. You can see that in psychologists who are working either in the IDP centers or also going out into the train stations to see how they can calm people down, because this new wave of migrants is in a more vulnerable state than the first wave that came through last week. These are people who've been under bombing and under shelling, and they are already traumatized, yeah, and there's a greater need to show that care and that love and to calm people down. We also, I'd like to also lift up the women who, Aloysius mentioned this, who have courageously taken their children and have crossed the border to keep their children safe, and that their husbands could feel the peace knowing that their family is somewhere where it's safe. And the grueling trip, it can last anywhere from 2 to 3 days just to get to the border and then cross the border into the other country. And again, this generosity and courage of spirit that we see is truly inspiring. So with that, maybe I would complete my comments. And again, I would like to take the opportunity now to thank everyone who has expressed concern for us and offered aid and who has offered their prayers for the people of Ukraine and for what's happening here. I just wanted to make sure that you knew how much it's appreciated and how much it's felt and how much it fills, gives strength and fills our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tatiana, for being such a great woman and for, again, reminding us that when it comes to conflict or where conflict starts, Caritas is already present in those countries, and it's good to know that because of women who were planning ahead, Caritas Ukraine was ready to act when the crisis began. I think I speak in the name of everyone joining us online and also in this room that Ukraine is currently in our hearts and also in our prayers. Our next speaker, she's here with us in the house, Rita Rayam. Good. Rita Rayam is currently the the health and HIV advisor of Caritas Internationalis, but until not long ago, she was the general director of Caritas Lebanon, a country which hopefully we will be visiting with Pope Francis in the near future. In 2011, Rita published her book, Accreditation of NGO Healthcare Centers, and is a lecturer in several universities where she teaches a course on public health in emergency crisis. She holds a PhD in hospital and clinical pharmacy, as well as an MBA in health management. Rita, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And actually, it's going to be a little bit difficult to speak after Tatiana's moving speech. During humanitarian crisis, women and girls are immediately depicted as victims who need to be saved. Even when we're talking about vulnerable groups, we talk about women. During the pandemic, we discussed how COVID impacted negatively women, yet we somehow have forgotten that the frontliners are majority women. So basically, this is what we have been taught, what we have seen in the news, but this is neither the complete reality nor my experience. I was fortunate enough to witness the power of women. As a Lebanese, I have witnessed their role in peace building. As a humanitarian worker, I have witnessed their role in the church and their leadership. And working in health sector, I have witnessed their resilience and their commitment to build back a better future. As a Lebanese, we have faced many crises, and 2 years ago, our economic situation deteriorated, so people went to the street. And the revolution, Lebanese women participated in a very remarkable and impressive part of the revolution, so that a new slogan emerged. The revolution is female. This is what we used to speak in Lebanon. So I was trying to understand why this slogan. And while doing the research, I met painters who used to paint revolution as a woman. And I asked the question. And one painter got the answer. And I quote, she said that peace is materialized as a woman. People in power are not afraid of war, they are used to it. They are afraid of those who dare to have a voice and to give their opinion peacefully. End of quote. Lebanese revolution is not female. Revolution is for everyone, it's not exclusive. However, it was the peacefulness of the revolutions that was protected by women who made the revolution female. I'm not saying that women are peaceful and men are not. I'm saying that women are builders of dialogue because they do understand that once dialogue ends, war started. And because they understand that they are and we need to change the value system which justifies war. Peace is not a woman's essentialist attribute. It is a choice. With the Syrian crisis in Lebanon, there are many programs who have been developed to decrease the tension between host communities and the Syrian crisis. The programs who included women were the most effective and successful one. Because when women came together, when they shared the stories about their tradition, about their culture, those women who were depicted as vulnerable were able to change the perception and were able to put peace instead of war. Women are builders of dialogue, but they need one condition and one essential condition. They need to remove the barriers that confine them to their private place and allow them to reach the public place. At Caritas Lebanon, the story was quite different. Actually, when the church trusted women and put them in a leadership position, the organizational development and management was different. So when the number of women increased in the management, when youth were as well brought to the table of decision, the organization, although was facing many humanitarian crises, was managed in a very inclusive, future-oriented way. Empowering women is a very nice slogan, but it should be trusted. It should be translated by leaders who are aware of the value of women and who have the courage to place women at decision-making level. We have certainly to recognize that there's an unconscious blindness when it comes to equality, especially at leadership positions, and especially in positions that are still stereotyped. We say leadership is lonely. It's even lonelier when you are a woman. It's important to empower women at Caritas and beyond, not only because women are builders of dialogue, but because representation matters. In my field, in my research about equality in organizations, one key informant stated during the research that we need women at top management because, and I quote, not only they can lead by example, so they can awake the power in the women that are watching silently. End of quote. At health level, it is as well an important story. Throughout the world, women have had a critical role in combating the COVID-19 pandemic as frontline healthcare professionals and as caretakers, inventors, and community organizers. The crisis has underlined the importance of their efforts as well as the unequal costs that women and girls bear. Women leaders have proved their abilities, expertise, and networks to successfully lead COVID-19 reaction and recovery activities, and this deserves to be recognized. Women have played an important role in sharing critical health information with marginalized and hard-to-reach communities, in addressing gender-based violence and women's psychosocial needs, and in advocating for health and rights of everyone. Finally, Women are builders of dialogue simply because there's no other in their speech. As they face sometimes discrimination, they are the one seeking inclusion. The road is long, but we shouldn't surrender. Nowadays, more than ever, we need men and women who work for equality at all levels. And as one of the key informants in the research study puts it in a very quite great way, equality should be part of our system. It should be part of our work. It's like punching in and punching out every day. We do it unconsciously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. And I think I don't speak only for myself when I say that hearing you speak and also remembering the picture Ambassador Trott brought to us of the Russians and the Ukrainian delegation dialoguing and there only being men, I think everything would go faster, smoother, and more peaceful if women like you and Tatiana were able to actually be part of the conversation, because you have to be on the ground to truly understand the suffering people go in regions of conflict. Having said that, allow me to introduce the last member of this panel of these three voices from the Caritas confederation. This is Susana Rafali. She's Venezuelan, advisor of Caritas Venezuela, as we would say. She's a nutritionist and an advisor to Caritas who has made relieving hunger her life's work. At the suggestion of a Caritas colleague during the worst of the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, she researched and created a tool that exposed the tragic count of malnutrition in this Latin American country. Among the findings of the study she conducted in 2018 are the facts that 9 out of 10 people cannot afford the food they need every day, and over half of the population lost more than 24 pounds in just 1 year. For her humanitarian work, Rafali was named one of the world's most important women by the BBC in their top 100 women ranking in the year 2020. Having said that, Susana, thank you very much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Gracias. Thank you so much. I feel this big privilege of being here and having a space for us. Thank you all for and a special greeting to our Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis. I'm feeling proud and privileged, but it's not about me. I'm here not only as a woman, but as a Venezuelan woman, as a humanitarian worker, and also as a Caritas volunteer, as a woman of Caritas. But particularly being a Venezuelan in this space and thinking about the topic that we are sharing, I think that the best I can do is to share with you some insights about the process of negotiations in Venezuelan crisis. So it's easy to me to get the conclusion that these dialogues and these processes are not based on the outcomes, but it's really a process of achievement that we have been making throughout the process. From this experience of watching such a long process of negotiations and having such a little outcomes and being here dealing with a protracted crisis without a clear forecast. I have some insights regarding our role as a women in all of this. The first one is I have seen that women, we have been in the negotiation processes and in the peace building efforts, but maybe at the informal level. We engage in this peace-making process differently from those that used to sit in the table, around the table. I'm sorry to see that the previous negotiation tables have been without women. It's the last one when we managed to get at least 2 seats, but this is, I mean, this is important, but it's crucial also to realize that as women in Venezuelan peace building process, we not only at that table of negotiations, but continuing being a central partner in all comprehensive process within the society, which means to be there in the day-to-day intra-family and inter-community mediation, where Caritas and Caritas teams and Caritas women used to have a very strong role. We need to engage in both, but also to keep that leadership in local mediation and in local process and in the intra-household peace building process. The second insight is on the value of inclusiveness and how we can see and realize that being there and taking part of the peace building processes as a woman make the process more diverse and make the process diverse as the society is. So the inclusiveness of having women participated in this mirror the society more comprehensively. So women participation in dialogues and the aspirations of society, and this of course raise the political significance of the dialogues of the peace building processes and making broader the social acceptance of any consensus, and also making the commitments strongest and more sustainable. So we realize that for having a sustainable peace outcome, the process needs to be inclusive as the society. I have been also realizing that as a women, we bring quality to the process of negotiations and to the peace building meetings and processes. When I say quality, I'm talking about not necessarily focusing on issues and conceptual topics, but actually bringing quality to the process and commitments towards the peace agreements. So even if we can play multiple roles as facilitators, advisors, or mediators in the peace building processes, as a women, I think that we have the possibility with all the parties based on trust. So what I'm saying is, as women, in the peace building processes, we bring to the table trust, and we bring that intuition to perceive changes and tensions and finding ways of resolving them timely. So this process of bringing quality more than conceptual issues to the dialogues and building process is especially important when it's the case of conflicts that used to evolve with violence, with extensive violence. I have seen in Venezuela that as women, we are the main ones that are providing a sound support to victims, which is a very special role from our side. So it's easy to see in Venezuela that the main organizations that are moving towards victim reparations and justice are led by women, by the mothers and wives of political prisoners and of people that have been killed in the street and have been surviving violence. So it's women, those who are there providing support to victims and encouraging the necessary reparation to those people. This brings us to the conclusion that we have a special roles in terms of being essentially in the specific case of Venezuela, as humanitarian groups, and Caritas has been playing a protagonic role in this case. We have been setting the humanitarian agenda and the social issues on the table as a perfect platform for dialogue. So we have been insisting, and it has been successful from our side, saying that the humanitarian agenda is not the point to be negotiated in those dialogues, but is the reason to start the dialogues and to sit together and try to put together the pieces for agreements and reconciliations. We have this not only at the very strategic level, but we have tried this at the local level in the very poor parishes, where we sit together people from different parties with the malnutrition at the center. And at that moment, we forget the difference and try to get this as a common field of understanding. So for us, the possibility of being humanitarian and being women working in the humanitarian has been a good chance to set the humanitarian action as a perfect platform for agreements. Women participation in these peace building processes means that we are there not only for women issues, but for bringing humanitarian to the table. And to us to keep the people at the center of the dialogues, and also as a women, we have been noticing that we are, as a women, excellent recipients of agreements dividends, including sound investment of humanitarian and peace building mechanisms in education and in spiritual restoration. So not only have agenda or and
I'm sorry, Susana, we cannot hear you properly. So we're going to try to see if we can restore the connection, and in the meantime, try to go on so we can actually keep to schedule. I am very sorry for that, Barbara. Okay. And if you have Susana, if you have the rest of your remarks, prepared, maybe you can send them to the head office of Caritas Internationalis, and we can maybe distribute them through social media if needed. Thank you very much.
The internet connection is
Yes, the connection is very difficult. Thank you very much for that. And after that, we go to the last speaker of this afternoon, someone who by now needs no introduction among church insiders, Sister Nathalie Becquart. Born in France, she oversaw the National Service for Evangelization of Young People and for Vocations within the Bishops' Conference in France between 2008 and 2018. And she has been working in one way or the other in the Office of the Synod of Bishops, at least since 2019, when she was named a consultor, and she has been the Undersecretary since 2021. Hence, I believe it's a surprise for no one that her closing remarks will be a reflection on how Caritas can assist the synodal process of walking together in order to promote witness and dialogue on the role and participation of women, both in Caritas and in society at large.
Thank you, and thank you all of you for this invitation and your participation and this incredible time together to listen to women. And as you ask me to give a kind of conclusion on a reflection on how Caritas can assist the synodal process of working together in order to promote witness and dialogue on the role and participation of women in Caritas and communities, my feeling is that I'm not sure there is a need for other words because we have listened to such a density of experience, and it speaks for itself. So I would like to, before talking, to propose you, because the first thing when we think about being involved in the synodal process, to assist the synodal process, thinking about what is a synodal church, it is a church of listening. And this is this style of listening to each other. And I think we have listened to the importance, so great importance to listen to women also. So I would like to propose you just 1 minute in silence to reflect on everything we have listened to, as a way also to listen to what the Holy Spirit is telling us through the voices of women, as we have listened to this afternoon. Because this is first the style we are all called to be involved in this style of listening, and especially for Caritas, who is already doing that at the grassroots, but at all levels of the church. So I propose just 1 minute in silence. So the first thing, I think, for Caritas and all of us who want to be involved in the synodal process, it's really a process to listen, of mutual listening, but especially to listen to the poorest, to the victims, to those who are on the peripheries, to those who are marginalized. And we have seen how, and you have reminded that in many, many different ways. When you look at the statistics, we can see that with the war, with migrants, but also unemployment, COVID crisis, the women are the first victims and the first suffering. So that's why if we really want to listen to the poorest, we first need also to listen to the women. And what we learn is that if we are able in the church to listen to the women and to listen to the poorest, and Caritas is the first place within the church to do that, then you help everybody to listen. When the poorest, when the women, when the youngest are listened to, it is a kind of road to assure you that everybody will be listened to. And the experience of the former synods have really demonstrate that a synod and synodality is a sound box for women. It's a way to give a voice to them, and it was recognized that they had a major role during the last two synods of bishops. So I think that for Caritas, as you emphasized today, with this experience of so many women of resilience, of courage, of facing many different experiences and bringing these visions of cultivating dialogue, peace building, the style for encounter, that's the first thing we need to become a more synodal church. So Caritas as completely is part of the church, is a kind of school, and could be all the more a school of leadership, a school of responsibility, and so also a school of synodality for women, to help them, as I say, to help the whole church to really listen to them, and especially to those who usually don't have a voice. But as it was highlighted, they are not only victims, they are also protagonists and resilient. And so it's through Caritas, and we have heard that, and I have met so many women who have been involved as volunteers, as in different positions of leadership through Caritas. It's a school of leadership for them also then to continue to get to in other places in the church also to. So I think what Caritas want to promote witness and dialogue on the role and participation of women is not only for Caritas, but it's for the society and for the church. And that's truly, the main call that the last two synods brought, and the fruits of those two past synods was really to state very strongly the need for more participation of women within the church, but also for more women in decision-making, more women in leadership. It's written in the document. So I think that Caritas can also rely and integrate those documents to continue to a change of mentality, because at the end, what we are talking about today is a long road to help the society and the church to change the mindset, because we are coming from such a mindset of, we can say, domination, a kind of patriarchalism. And spontaneously, because of their experience, women are more in a vision of cooperation, reciprocity, circularity, interdependence between men and women, not only between women. And that is the vision of a synodal church. It's a vision of an inclusive church and of a relational church in which it's impossible to isolate someone or to isolate those in leaderships from the community. And I think that a very important point that women can bring and help the church to have a new style of leadership. And places like Caritas, as we are a school for this new style of leadership, that is the style called for a synodal church, in which we are in this vision of servant leadership and collaborative leadership. So we really count on the commitment and involvement of Caritas to promote the synodal listening to everybody, especially those in needs and all those you can reach. And within your experience within the organization of Caritas, also as a federation of different Caritas, you have an experience of connecting the local and the global. And it's a richness to share with the whole church, because it will help also the church to move forward and to find to discern the ways for synodality, as this synod is truly aimed at the synodal conversion of the church, but it's a long path, it's a long road, and you know, with all your experience at Caritas, that those change needs time, and being in having this experience will help, I think, all the church to continue our path toward a world of fraternity that is also a church of fraternity, and that is the style. And I would just conclude with this, what I have learned from so many women, and especially during my, when I was young and later, I have been often very inspired by all those women during World War II who were in the camp, who were resilient after to continue. And one of these women, Geneviève Antonius de Gaulle, has written, "The secret of hope is the secret of fraternity." That means in the most horrible situation and tragic situation, it's only through fraternity, solidarity, and mutual support that we can find a path of hope. And I think we have heard that, and the church is called today through this synod to bring hope to the world, our world that needs so much hope. Thank you.
That was a very interesting tour. I hope you agree. We've been to India and Myanmar, South Sudan, Ukraine, Lebanon, Venezuela, and of course, the Vatican and the Universal Church in its efforts to become all the more synodal. It has definitely been an interesting afternoon. I would like to thank everyone for joining us, but before actually saying goodbye, I would like to thank the interpreters, because I think most of the time you guys don't get the credit you deserve in actually making it possible for us all to speak in English, but actually reach the Universal Church. So thank you very much. We had interpreters in Spanish, French, and Italian, and I would like to, for all of us to and now, yes, we have officially reached the time to say goodbye. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, both here and in Rome's Angelicum University and from all over the world via Zoom and YouTube. Be sure, please, to join Caritas Internationalis and the British Embassy to the Holy See throughout the month-long initiative celebrating women. The next seminar will take place on Tuesday, March 15th, and will discuss women as pillars of hope, welcoming and accompanying. I am Inés Martín. I'm the Rome Bureau Chief of Crux, and it has been an honor and my pleasure to be here with you and guide this conversation on women as pillars of dialogue. Thank you very much. And for those of you who joined us in person, but we didn't want to tell the people online, there is drinks and celebration upstairs for the fact that you braved this Roman day in which we have